Recently had the opportunity to have a conversation with Erik Ireland, who is the voice behind the podcast Listen to Sleep and at the core of the Awaken Your Myth program. Erik is authentic. He's generous. He's kind. He's also an expressive, curious, and creative, energetic force. This particular conversation, we cover a lot of insights, and we play with things in sometimes a more practical way, as well as diving into the depths of this. It was a very enjoyable conversation, and I have a sense you'll enjoy it too. Tell us a little bit about how this path has gone.
Sure. Let's see. It started on Long Island in 1966. I had a very, very, very traumatic birth. 36 hours, my mom was in labor. And that trauma followed me, for so long. Hold on one sec. Joey, buddy, you can't pull the pelican apart. Sorry. No. He's trying to destroy Bodhi's toy. That trauma was something I was either running away from or denying up until really just a few years ago. That it was so, there were so many things in my life that were rooted in that resistance. You know, I was the baby that went, no, I'm not coming out, until they finally had to cut me out. And that was my story, was resistance. And I identified with it. It was my path. Every choice I made as a child and as an adult was in some way resisting something. Very little moving toward anything in my life unless it was a method of resistance. And so when I finally looked at that deeply, I was fortunate enough to be in a workshop with Gabor Mate. And I was in tears. I was like really realizing how much this resistance was at the heart of so much of my suffering in life. And I said, what do you do about trauma that is from a time you can't even remember? I don't know anything about that birth trauma. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't there, but I know I was. And so he looked at me and he said, do you have a lot of resistance in your life? I was like, yeah. He goes, that's your trauma. That's it right there. You don't need to go back to that time. You don't need to know anything about that time. It's all here right now. Be with that. And that blew my mind open to really the power of mindfulness and getting present. Because it really is all here right now. Whether you want to talk about just dealing with your trauma or, you know, trying to find happiness in your job or your relationship, or just when you're sitting alone, or if you want to awaken, or if you want to become fully realized and, you know, have non-dual realization and just go all the way, it all starts right now. And that grounded me in a way that allowed me to really start a search that felt not just authentic, but like it wasn't based in resistance anymore. It was really kind of going the other way. Love that. And that's when I realized the power of curiosity, self-compassion, and gentleness.
Love that. Yeah. And, you know, with that, oftentimes we hear about hero's journey and things like that. Would love just to hear how that captured your attention.
Yeah. Well, the hero's journey was a big part of that resistance for me, because I looked at heroes as resistors. Like
Ah,
they're like me. They go out in the world and they don't do what everyone else is doing. They go and they find the dragon and they save the prince or princess. You know, like I didn't want to say princesses. I wanted to say princes, but it all seemed to me like it was they were my people, right? They're going against the grain. They're not like everybody else. So my understanding of the hero's journey when my aunt told me about it was that it was a way to move through life kind of like a combination of, you know, dancing to your own drummer and uh, and moving toward who you really were. But I didn't get that that journey wasn't all this way. I didn't get the part that was this way.
mm,
And so for 25 years, I was just moving through the world trying to make bold choices, um, taking lots of time to myself because I'm kind of split right down the middle, extrovert, introvert, and telling stories. I always loved telling stories. So I thought, well, I'm going to have all these adventures and I'm going to tell all these stories and I'm going to make my life an exciting story and take lots of time to, you know, to enjoy it. Those were my goals. And so I got on this path of the hero's journey. I did all kinds of amazing things. You know, like my first partner and I bought a sailboat in the 90s, a 29-foot sailboat, and we headed out the Golden Gate and turned left. We had $5,000. We didn't know how far we were going to go or what that trip was going to be, but I was like, let's just do it. And those were the kind of adventures that I wanted my life to be. And I thought that would make me who I wanted to be. And that also would make me happy. Adventure, happy. No adventure, not happy. And my goal was happy. I figured someday I'll find like a place where I'm just happy all the time and then done. Just ride that wave to the end. I think a lot of us do this, right?
oh, yeah.
You know, we're looking for that time. And so many adventures later, and finally my longest hero's journey was really moving out into the middle of nowhere and, you know, living in a cabin in the woods. And that took 15 years for that to happen. And I was sure that was going to be the one. Just made me happy, all good, done now. Well, I got here and I was like, oh, this is no different. I brought all of that. You know, everything I was running from, everything I was resisting was still there. You know, here in my perfect place, my super happy time. And that was a little bit crushing to me. You know, that was a really like an existential crisis because I'm like, okay, I had been betting everything on this. What now? So, and that's really where Awaken Your Myth came from. Yeah. Is I started looking at what had I been doing, what worked, what didn't, what was missing, and so I also became a mindfulness teacher around the same time. I joined a mindfulness teacher training program and got my certification as a mindfulness teacher because I thought I wanted to make mindfulness meditations on my sleep podcast. But it ended up not being about that at all. It ended up really finally teaching me what mindfulness was. And that allowed me to combine everything. So I created this thing called the Myths Mind Reset, which was basically what I did to sort of reset my own mind to allow me to use it as a tool instead of an identity. And it's myths because it's an acronym, because I love acronyms. Mindfulness, yielding, transformation, healing, and storytelling. And I had done the transformation, healing, and storytelling part my whole life. I was like, let's change it up. Let's take lots of time to relax and enjoy life. And let's tell and create good stories.
Yeah.
But what was missing? the mindfulness, and the yielding.
Mm.
I was pushing my way through life. And so much of it was resisting my own sense of unworthiness, my own sense of being unable to be successful.
Mm.
So even the successes I had in life were a result of you go and screw you to that sense of unworthiness. So there was no satisfaction in it. There was no sense of like, oh, this is the realization of something important or authentic. It was just kind of like, yeah, I did it. Wasn't satisfying. None of it was. And so when I put mindfulness in it, when I started to be in the moment, to really look at what does that mean? What's here right now?
Mm.
To get curious and to be gentle with myself. It was huge. And these myths, mind reset pillars correspond with the stages of the hero's journey, which is the oldest secular wisdom we have about how to move through the unknown. So it starts in the ordinary world with an ordinary person in our ordinary life. The great thing about the hero's journey is you don't have to be a superhero. It's not about saving the world or being supernatural. It's about an ordinary person starting right where they are. And that really appealed to me. And so you start there, you move from the ordinary world, something happens. The Death Star is approaching, or Princess Leia needs help. It's usually not something good like you won the lottery, but that's the call to adventure, right?
Yeah.
And that call to adventure requires yielding. You can't fear, doubt, overthinking, that won't do it. You have to go, okay, I'm headed into the unknown.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that.
Oh, yeah.
And take that step. And that's why a big part of the beginning of any hero's journey movie is oh no, I don't really want the unknown. I'm just going to try and do this here. I'm going to stay. I thought I didn't like the ordinary world and I was a little bored and uncomfortable, but you know what? It's better than that.
Yeah. The negotiation.
Yeah. And so we all go through that. And that really requires yielding, saying, okay, I know this is the unknown. I'm going to yield to that. And eventually in life, we all need to go beyond yielding and surrender. We got to give up this meat suit one day. And yielding is a way of exercising that surrender muscle. I would also say that, a lot of people talk about awakening as a death before death, and it's the same thing. Surrender is involved. So yielding is a way of training that muscle. And it's the hero's first step towards surrender in the hero's journey.
So can we get a little bit more into it? I mean, if somebody out there isn't quite sure what is the essence of yielding, can you get into that a little bit? Like what is there a sensation? Does it have a feeling? Does it feel like there's a specific process or a method involved?
Yeah. It has all of those things. It's really, and we know that we have the opportunity for it wherever there is an option for the unknown, which is kind of always. Whenever we're choosing what we know, what we prefer, who we think we are over another option that would be the unknown, change, transformation. You don't always have to choose yielding, but
I see it.
If you're not, if what you are, what you have, the choices you've made are not getting you what you were looking for, and you know this through your own intuition, not through the mind, because the mind is always going to tell you, no, go with the safe one. But we know so much about this. Look how long we have been doing this. Go with that. But when your intuition says, but what's there? What's there? That's what we yield to. We don't yield to our doubts and fears. We yield to our intuition. And our intuition is what carries us into the unknown. So yielding is always a move of going to the intuition.
Beautiful.
And that's not easy. You just because sometimes the ego will like be like, oh no, wait, I'm the intuition. And it takes that gentleness, that mindfulness, that cultivating the awareness that mindfulness is.
Hmm.
And when we can bring that awareness to those moments, we have the ability to sense intuition even over the loudest howlings of the ego or the mind identified self.
Beautiful. That's so well put. Yeah. That's much clearer. And it really, it's a, that pattern of comfort, that pattern of familiarity. And then there's another voice there saying, maybe something different this time, maybe something outside the pattern. I love that. I think that's really vivid. Beautiful.
Yeah, and it just was mirroring my own experience so perfectly. Like, wow, okay, I've been doing this for so long, and this is where my suffering is. This is where my struggle is.
Mm.
What would happen if we did it another way?
Beautiful. Yeah, that I know this is a little bit more of a direct pointing when it comes to the definition of insanity. But if we really do look at that, how often throughout life have we attempted to apply the same mechanic over and over and over and just really want something different to happen? That's pretty brutal, you know? And so coming to terms with that, there is something in a hero's journey with that too. Seeing that, oh man, this has been the same pattern over and over, and there's been this expectation that something absolutely amazing is going to come of this.
Yeah. And that is the hero's journey story. That's the reason for it, to let us know that there's another way. It's the oldest secular wisdom we have from prehistory. It's the oldest story we've been telling.
Yeah.
Thousands of years before the Buddha, there was a story called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the earliest hero's journey story we have.
Mm.
And it's all about finding who you are, a deep, non-conceptual knowing, coming back to who you are from the mind identified self.
Love it.
From the self that we all grow up with, but never finish growing up. Really,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
we need this mind identified self. And the hero's journey was basically the gift that these shamans and storytellers left for us, that said, hey, you're not done if you're only here. You need to finish the becoming a full human. And that's really what the hero's journey was. And that's why it still means so much to us today. That's why we still sit in the theater and watch the Barbie movie and cry, because we know that is our story. We know it deep down in the core of who we are, that it is our destiny, if you will, to know who we are. And the hero's journey is the way to get there.
Beautiful.
A way to get there.
And story is just such a human experience anyway. It's I used to call sitting around the campfire caveman TV, because it was this experience of sharing, and that's just usually what happens. It's this sharing of story, this connection in all those pieces. And I know for a lot of people on this path, there's this sense of reject. Oh, that's just story. That's just story. But it doesn't mean that story needs to be rejected. It just means that story doesn't have to be the driver of this direct experience, but it still belongs. It belongs kind of more in a broad sense. It doesn't have to be the driver of this moment. It doesn't have to be a narrative per se, but there's still something to it. It's a form of human transmission, if you will. And,
Sure.
just to kind of reaffirm that for some people, like, if you are so putting all this effort in resisting story, you might be missing the point to some degree. It's not that the story is haunting you. It's that the narrative in this instant is attempting to overlay what is present. That's all. And it doesn't mean that the story doesn't belong. The story absolutely belongs.
Yeah. And most traditions, most wisdom traditions, are just drenched in story, metaphor, and all, except maybe Zen, but those stories, how are you going to explain something so non-conceptual that can't be explained in words to someone? How do you explain a realization that is not able to be put in words unless you're using the metaphors that stories and poetry and art allow?
I love it.
So it's
Metaphor.
about not holding that story as my story. It's the story. It's a part of it.
That's juicy. Yeah. Yeah. The metaphor, something more transcendent than the literal wording of the history. I love that.
Yeah, but
Beautiful.
what do most of us call our story? Oh, my husband left me and I've been wrecked ever since. And I had this thing happen to me and oh, I'll never get over it. The
Totally.
grief is so awful. I'll never move through this. When will it end?
Yeah.
We tell ourselves that story as if it's true. And every time we tell it, it becomes true.
Yeah. It becomes a fixation.
It becomes a fixation.
My
Yeah, it
entire
becomes our
definition.
experience.
Yeah. My entire definition is based on this exact telling of the story that's been told over and over and over.
Yeah, and let me tell it to you again so that you understand.
But I see the value right there of like transit, like having that have a metaphorical value to it. Not getting caught up in the detail as much, and then that helps us kind of see a bigger picture. And there's something beautiful that's poetry, that's art.
Yeah, and that's why a big part of the Awaken Your Myth program has storytelling in it, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the way we take the story and we make it something that isn't our identity. It's a thing we can tell. It's an art we can practice. It's a sharing of our authenticity through a telling of a story. Instead of a story that defines us,
Mm.
it's us that tries to bring the non-conceptual into a sort of a definition that we can share.
Love it. And with that, when it comes to authenticity, what what shows up in terms of authenticity? If you were to want to be able to relay that to someone else, how would you describe it if they were having a crossroads of not being sure if this is authentic or not?
Sure. It's we all know our own scent and the scent of those we love. There is, we were talking the other day about how consciousness is kind of as the medium for the senses.
Hmm.
And there is this that comes with that, this scent, it's there and it's gone. It's the most subtle of things. It's our individuality. It's when you look at a forest of trees and every tree is the same, but every tree is a little different too. It's embracing the fullness of who we are, which is, we're far more similar than we are different, but we are all different. And that uniqueness is a part of the wholeness of what we are and what this world, this universe is. So when we deny it and we go, oh, there's nothing here, I'm an empty vessel, we're stuck in another fixation that's like saying, no, I'm no different, I'm just like you. Or it's not, it hasn't been my experience, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Such an interesting paradox altogether. Yeah, because it's similar yet not the same. There's an essence there, and
Right.
that whole human connection piece is that similarity. It's the equilibrium or the fabric of this, as you speak of. Yet it seems to be showing up in such a kaleidoscope of expression, and that expression, we could call it individuality, but it's still
Yeah.
expression, and there's something in that. So what has arisen here a few times is expression is so crucial for authenticity. And not that it has to be an imposed kind of experience, but one of the pieces that seems to show up for a lot of people is the inability or the muting of that which wants to be expressed. And that can show up in a variety of ways. It can show up in terms of creativity, ability to just speak freely and openly, sexuality, any of these areas that are muted in that form of expression, it's going to be a rejection of authenticity, it seems.
Yeah. And that comes down to that thing we were talking about the other day too, that whole like that seesaw of like specialness and shame. And we just get on that, and that becomes a kind of the way we balance or try to balance all of that.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And I think the other real beauty of authenticity is that when we share our authenticity with others, they know it. We see it. It's like a candle that we all have. And some of us have a candle that is nearly out. But those of us that have a sense of our own authenticity can hand that candle to someone else to light theirs.
No doubt.
And it becomes this way of, it's like when I see people like finally yielding to the unknown and holding their story a little more lightly and practicing mindfulness and really getting in touch with their own authenticity instead of their own shame or specialness, I learned something about me.
Right.
You know, in their authenticity, their sharing of their authenticity, there is a deeper knowing that comes for all of us. I mean, how are we going to move forward in the world without that?
Of course.
Do we have systems in place that tell everyone how to be? Like, is it working?
You know, this is a beautiful transition into some of those three aspects that you brought up earlier. It seems as if engaging with authenticity and compassion or self-compassion, there is like that transitionary space where that lighting of the torch, that passing of the candle flame, that's compassion. And it seems to have a stemming of this full engagement here. Talk about that a little bit, like this self-compassion piece.
Yeah. It was the thing I needed the most when I first started the moving from resistance to yielding to surrender, which was really kind of the journey. It went that way. And yielding is like a nice baby step towards surrender. Surrender can just seem like another thing to fixate on. And yielding can seem like, okay, I could do that. I could just say, okay, this one thing I'm not going to resist. And so as I started doing that, so much, because resistance isn't bad, it's a protector. It's something that's a part of our psyche, our identity, that's trying to protect us from a perceived threat. In my case, it was, when I was 10 years old, I had this total meltdown about I wasn't going to be able to do this paper route I had committed to doing for a week for the neighbor kid when he was on vacation. And I carried that forward into my adult life and my work life for 30 years. I am not able to do the things that I want to do. I will not be successful at the things I want to do. And then, other people at the time that might have said, oh, no, you can do this. They were just like, just go do it. And so I had this deep resistance, right? Take one example. How do you move through that? Self-compassion for that happened at all, for that little kid that was, Joey's getting a drink. I don't know if you can hear it. For that little kid that was hurting and feeling like he could not possibly do this thing he had to do, all the way up to the adult right there in this moment that is struggling with actually putting this into practice to try and become more of who I am. And when I first started, this was something that I learned about in my mindfulness teacher training too. And there's so much science behind it about how good self-compassion is for us. Even if you're not talking about awakening, if you just want to have a better quality of life, without self-compassion, you really kind of like have hobbled yourself.
Yeah.
And like most people, I originally looked at it like self-compassion, that sounds like selfishness. And I think a lot of us do, because we just think, oh, and also it has, if you're in non-duality circles, it has the S word in it, which isn't good. So people are like, self-compassion, who would that compassion even be for? So I started there, and that was so healing. It's really allows this vulnerability to come forward, this authenticity, this sense of intuition. It all starts with going, everything is fine. I am okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be good to me. I'm not going to beat myself up.
There's a fragrance here of forgiveness, especially when it comes to fixation on something we've done, like as part of that aspect of the story, getting to a space of, we will say a lot of times surrender, let go. But I mean, all these terms don't really mean anything. But I think sometimes when we come up with a synonym, it might have a different resonance for people. And I'm hearing a sense of forgiveness that's showing up internally versus most people's sense of forgiveness is out here. But that experience you had when you were 10, something had to come to terms. And maybe it wasn't even associating directly with the story. Maybe it was showing up presently, but there was a sense of forgiveness. And really, the forgiveness, if we were to like break it really, directly down, it just means to give as we have once given.
Mm-hmm.
No withholding, no holding back.
Yeah. And again, forgiveness is like yielding. It's a move that we can make toward authenticity. So when we have actual things we can do to move toward that, for me, that was so important, because I know, like, in the realm of non-duality and awakening, I read Eckhart Tolle's books 20 years ago. But I was like, okay, I get it. I feel it. I taste it. But I have zero idea how to make my own life anything like that. What do I do?
Yeah.
That was really what I kind of wanted to get at. And I was also inspired by Angelo's book about how clear, it's like I tell him, I'm like, this is the manual that should come with every Eckhart Tolle book, because Eckhart Tolle is there to inspire and illuminate, but he doesn't tell you how to do it.
Right.
And Angelo, he'll tell you how to do it. If you want to awaken, Angelo will tell you how to do it. If you want to get closer to your own authenticity, if you want to start to hold your own story a little more lightly and know a deep non-conceptual knowing of who you are, that's what I wanted Awaken Your Myth to be. I wanted it to be, how do you do it? So I took everything that had worked for me to find my own path, all the skills and attitudes, and combine them into this coaching journey and community, so that people could they could find their path, not my path. This isn't one of those, become a marketing guru in 3 weeks and make all kinds of money. And it's not my path. This is, we're going to find your path.
I love it. I love it because it is built on, so to speak, authenticity itself. So it has to exude the same kind of experience, which of course is going to make it very individualized for the people that are engaging with it. There's no question about it. That's beautiful.
And it's meant to, by design.
Beautiful.
It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
And what I love about our we do Zooms in the community every couple of weeks is, I started out with a meditation and a short talk on whatever our topic is that week, but it's the other people sharing their stories, their challenges, their progress. That is really what we're all learning from.
It's a real community.
It's a real community.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Not to shift gears too much, although I am just so
shift away.
I'm so curious, my friend. What led to, or how does the story go that led to Listen to Sleep? It's such an enigmatic space, and I'm like, I'm so curious.
Sure. For people who don't know, Listen to Sleep is my sleep and meditation podcast that I started in 2019. Um, there were you want to hear the real story?
Yeah, man.
Okay. There were a handful of things that came together. I was having that existential crisis about how did this 15 years of chasing a goal of living in a cabin in the woods, which is literally like this total dream that's supposed to make you happy, how did that wind up why are all my demons still here? So I'm going through that existential crisis. I am a voice actor who gets an audition for to read a bedtime story for a very large app that most people have talked about and heard about. That I didn't get the audition. And I got the audition, but I didn't get the job. So I was like, well, you don't like my bedtime story? Fine. I'll make my own bedtime story. I'm like, I have a studio. I know how to use the internet. I built a website for NASA. I can do this. So there was this kind of like a little bit of a puffed up Erik involved. And then I also thought what I really wanted to do was this was like my 7th podcast. I had started podcasting in the early 2000s when you had to explain to people what a podcast was. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see if I can make one that like will make me a little bit of money and help other people. Mm-hmm. I thought if I could be a little bit more financially independent and help other people, that might ease this existential crisis. And it really didn't. I mean, it does make a little bit of money, but like hobby business money, not like business money. But more than that, it has changed so many people's lives for the better. Mm-hmm. And I get so many emails from folks who just love it, or they'll tell me these beautiful stories of how their life changed from just getting a little better sleep and how those stories helped. So it really just started there, and now there's I think this tomorrow, or it comes out every Sunday, and I think this episode is number 327.
Wow, amazing. Yeah.
And then this year I started writing my own stories. I write them in conjunction with ChatGPT. We work together. I come up with an idea, I write out a little bit of what it is, and then we polish it. It spits it out. I go through and edit it, and then it's so I have a new story every week now. Whereas for the first 3.5 years, I was just reading stories from the public domain. And I just got a little tired of getting 3/4 of the way into a story and finding this horrible racism that was like, I couldn't even edit out. I'm done with this. So I'm going to make my own.
Especially public domain,
I know it's all more than 100 years old. So it's like racism was so much more casual and baked into everything back then. And a lot of times I could just delete it or change it. But ultimately, I just thought, I really would love to create my own stuff. And so a lot of these stories, almost all of them, they're hero's journey based. Or they also have, they're very inclusive. They have gay, transgender, non-binary characters, which you're never going to find in those public domains.
In the public domain? Yeah, definitely not.
So yeah, that's the story of Listen to Sleep. I still do one episode a week, and I think I probably will forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love it. Yeah, a lot of... Do you find a lot of crossover with from Listen to Sleep to Awaken Your Myth?
I do. I mean, the Awaken Your Myth community is almost exclusively folks that have joined from my TikTok lives, because I don't really market it in any way. I don't buy ads or anything like that.
Of course.
So, and my TikTok and my Instagram are a lot of the podcast listeners. So yeah, there's a lot of tie in there, and I do a meditation every other week. So it's introduced thousands of people to mindfulness. Beautiful. Who were just there for the stories.
Beautiful.
And that's also been satisfying.
I mean, piquing that curiosity, that there's something to that, this strange insight came up the other day, and it just simply said, curiosity is weightless, and
Mhm.
there's a lightness to it, and
Mhm.
there's a sense of innocence there, and I think being, the way you do videos and those pieces that we do see, it does have a lightness. There is a curiosity. There's a sense of adventure that what was the term you used? The call to adventure. There's a curiosity in the call to adventure itself, and that's just so delightful. Even if you don't want to play a wizard, there's wizardry here, my friend. There's wizardry here, and just such a bright, exciting, and interesting way, and it's so appreciated. Um, I did want to speak a little bit to the other two aspects you brought up besides just self compassion, because the conversation that we had the other day, it was so good. Um, so if you're up to talking a little bit
Sure.
about that.
Yeah. I was I'm in the middle of writing a book, and so I was just this week I was writing a chapter on mindfulness, and the things that have been my guiding stars in my mindfulness practice that have led to so much depth and transformation in my own life are gentleness, curiosity, and self-compassion. And I think a lot of times we get confused by what mindfulness is because it's sort of sold as meditation. Like mindfulness is meditation, but it's not.
Mm.
Mindfulness is an awareness that
Hmm.
we're cultivating based on the present moment, being there non-judgmentally in the service of self-knowledge.
Hmm.
So we can do that for 10 seconds
Mhm.
by bringing curiosity, gentleness, and compassion to our current experience. Like right now, we've been talking for like 45 minutes, we can just stop, take a breath, be right here. And I can get curious about, what right here? What do I see behind these closed eyes? And that's mindfulness.
Oh man.
When we take that break, that moment, it just starts to become second nature.
Mhm.
So I always recommend people start right there. We all have, if we don't have curiosity, it's there. You've just covered it up so deeply. So a good way to start uncovering your curiosity is to spend as much time as you can with the things that you are curious about.
Mhm.
What really grabs you?
Mhm.
You may think, I don't have any time to do that. And most of us do, because once you start picking at that scab that's over your curiosity and it starts to bleed all over the place, it's what's bleeding out is all your resistance,
Mm.
all of your the things you were piling onto your curiosity with your mind and your identity that were keeping you from knowing yourself more deeply. So we resist a lot of the things we're curious about, but I always tell people, go for that, start there,
Yeah,
because that's gonna, like yielding, that will start exercising your curiosity muscle.
I love that.
Yeah.
So there was a gentleman I was speaking with yesterday, and he was talking about when he's in a deep place of mind identification, his body it's doing things. It's rocking, it's playing with a pen, so on and so forth. It's as if curiosity is actually always there, maybe in a very, very fundamental way. And I said, what if you just checked in with that and you brought attention all the way to the pin that you were playing with kind of off to the side? Is that curiosity? And he picked up this pin and he went, yeah, there's something so interesting about this simple mechanism right here. And so when you had us pause for that moment, when we just fully engage with the pregnancy of that pause, that's it. That's
Mm.
beautiful. Love that. It's always there. I mean,
It's
it
always
really is
there.
always there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always there. And at first, like for people who are just starting, you kind of have to take it on faith that it's always there, because it won't seem like it's there. You close your eyes and the mind gets louder.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta open my eyes again. I gotta get the pen. Where's the pen? Um, and that's okay. That's where the self-compassion comes in. That's
Mm.
where the gentleness comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where the like 10 seconds comes in. Start really little, as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go and sit on a cushion for 45 minutes and go like this and try to do it, because that just is torture for most of us if we haven't done any kind of a mindfulness practice before. That's not self-compassionate.
Yeah, and
So,
you're that yielding that you speak of, and also just that little by little aspect. That's compassionate too. Isn't it? It's interesting how compassion just is compassion is compassion is compassion, because even that pointing from you, my friend, is showing up from just pure compassion. Some teachers will do this. They will point straight to it and they'll be like, yeah, this doesn't exist. There's nothing. There is nothing. Have a good time. But what you are demonstrating, even with Awaken Your Myth, is this is a compassionate path, a compassionate game to play, to just little by little it and explore for yourself. That's gentleness. That's the
yeah.
gentleness aspect of this compassion. And I got to say, it is so felt here. It is like, it's like this. It feels like a hug every time we speak. It feels like just a big, warm, happy, juicy hug.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I'll say that I get that same compassion from your sort of trickster approach. If you're talking about archetypes, right? I really feel like what you bring is the like almost the sleight of hand. Like there's a joy and a playfulness in your approach that is all built on compassion.
Mm.
No one's going to get hurt by
Mm.
that, by those tricks or that playfulness. It's a way of dragging the mind along so it thinks it knows what it's going to get, and then like, whoa, in the same way that Eshwar is like a ninja who just like whack, it's we all have our ways of being and telling stories in this world. That is the authenticity. That's the scent of Josh or Eshwar or Angelo or whoever is sharing who they are. We all bring that scent to it.
And it is so beautiful. I mean, there is a feeling of like being in that state of openness and vulnerability, even as you're expressing this, that it's like right on the verge of tears all the time. And it's just so poetic, you know? Yeah, similar, yet somehow different.
Yeah, right. It's all poetry. It's all, every poem is a story. It just doesn't have the story elements of, but yeah, I mean, every picture, every painting.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that all comes together is really, really nice. So this book, super exciting. Just throwing that out there. And isn't it? Yeah.
I'm excited too. I say I'm excited. I'm like, I'm actually really not. It's the thing I'm doing, and it's yeah. Somebody asked, and I was like, okay, and so now I'm ready.
Yes.
It's going to be a while. Right now there's just 2 chapters out of 18 written, but it for the longest time I didn't want this to be a book because I wanted it to be an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to just write another book and have people be like, buy it and not get anything from it. But I feel like now, having done the coaching journey and put it all together as a community, I really know what the important parts are that could be communicated in a book. Yeah. And a lot of people like books. I love books. So,
yeah. And
yeah.
It's its own call to adventure.
Totally. I'm going to be an author. What?
All rad. And so for people to find more about you, is it awakenyourmyth.com?
Yeah. Awakenyourmyth.com or listentosleep.com is where the podcast is. Or you can just search Erik Ireland anywhere and my stuff is there.
I will definitely.
Google,
Well, I'll also
Spotify,
I'll
whatever.
include all the links to everything that you'd like me to include on the video. And yeah, people, I really have a feeling of resonance. There's no question about it. So I'm just so glad to share this with you, my friend.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I also want to invite people more days a week than not around 8 o'clock in the morning on TikTok, 8 o'clock Pacific on TikTok. I go live for half hour, an hour, and just answer people's questions and chat with people who are in the community and people who are curious about it. People who just have like, how do I deal with this kind of questions? So it's a great community there. It's totally free. If you want to join us, just look for me on TikTok. I am at Listen to Sleep.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to join one of those for sure.
That'd be great. I would love that.
Just
I
to
would love that.
Just to be, sometimes it's fun to be, kind of behind the scenes too.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love it.
But however it goes.
Anytime.
Man. All right. Well, I guess I'm just gonna pause this.
You gotta go. You got a thing.
Yeah, I got a thing soon.
Yeah, you got a thing in 3 minutes, don't you?
Oh, I have a little time, a little bit of a buffer.
Okay, cool.
And thank you so much, seriously. And yeah, as this continues and as this goes, anything I can do, any way I can participate, it just feels like a natural, easy all in. So however,
Thank you, Josh. Likewise, I know we had talked when I was there about doing a podcast episode for Listen to Sleep.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I was kind of thinking that I'll talk to Angelo and see what his. Do you know what the schedule for that documentary is?
I don't even know the title. Do you?
No, I have no idea. But I was thinking it might be fun to do, like, to have everybody in the documentary do an episode of Listen to Sleep and have it just kind of cross promote it, because there's thousands of people that listen to that. And I haven't really done any kind of non-duality or awakening stuff on Listen to Sleep. And now it's just sort of trickling its way into everything. And I figure that seems like a good way to go. But if you have other ideas before that, if you want at some point to hop on, I do a Zoom live every week, or every 2 weeks in the community. The people who are there, it's a smaller group. It's like, 15 or 20 people. Be great to have you do one of those and kind of talk about awakening, because I haven't really brought that up in the community either. And it would be nice to do that.
Absolutely.
With you. So we have lots of options. I am here to offer you the same support. And if you decide you want to like do a kind of a community thing of your own, or you ever need like web or whatever stuff, I have some experience there.
Oh man, and yeah, what you showed with the portal and all that with Awaken Your Myth, it is so elegant and simple to use. Just what I saw, I was just like, yeah, there's an art to that too, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel like and I spent years putting it together because I didn't want it to suck. I knew I had done enough things where I was like, this would be so good if, and I wanted my thing to be the thing that was so good. So thank you. I'm glad that comes through.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you.
This was so much fun. So when you have the recording, can you upload one for me and I'll make a version of it for my Awaken Your Myth podcast?
Absolutely. Yep.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, I can get it to you in any format you want. In fact, I can even Dropbox it or however you want it.
Actually, what I would kind of like to do maybe is I'd love to do another one of these where I interview you. This felt much more like you interviewing me. I'd love to do another one where I interview you.
Absolutely.
And we'll yeah. So let's plan that sometime soon too.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay.
Love to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My friend.
I love
such
you.
a wonderful morning. Two times in 1 week. Wow.
Yeah, it's the best.
Love it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, John.
Bye.
Bye.